Wow, day 83 of Bible in 90 days, or what's in the Bible. I almost forgot for a minute there. But day 83 of 90, which means we're only 7 days away. So this time next week, I think, we should have finished reading the entire Bible. That's so exciting. So today we're looking at the book of First Corinthians, the entire book of First Corinthians. So I'm beginning to make some changes, to the plan that if we can actually cover an entire book on an entire 2 books, we might as well do that rather than leaving out a few chapters. So yesterday we did the entire book, of Romans, which I think is a fantastic book, and it's got some really solid, information and stuff that can help us in our walk with Christ. So if you'd like to, please check out day 82 where we looked at Romans. So today, First Corinthians is Paul again, writing to the church in Corinth, or the Corinthians. When we're reading the book of Acts, we know that at some point, Paul passed through, the church at Corinth, or this place called Corinth, and he was there for a long time, and he was teaching them, etc. So perhaps maybe when he was in his journeys or travels, he was writing back letters, and maybe they had wrote him and asking him some questions. So that's kind of the basis for First Corinthians. So let's have a look. First Corinthians chapter 1, encouragement to the church, warning against divisions, the difference between the wisdom of the world and God's wisdom. God has chosen the foolish or the weak things, of the world to show His power. This is especially that no one, can boast. First Corinthians chapter 2, Paul's ministry in Corinth and his focus on the message of Jesus' resurrection, how we have the Spirit of God who teaches us all things. Chapter 3, immaturity in the church, because of the divisions that were happening. He talks about different people, helping them to get to where they were, but it was God that actually causes the growth. All people's work would be tested at the judgment. We are temples of the Holy Spirit. So imagine yourself as a temple where the Holy Spirit, who is God, dwells in. All of us, or all of them, belong to Christ and not to human teachers, because there was all this issue about, I belong to Paul, I belong to Apollos, I belong, on all these divisions and sects within the church, which were not, biblical at all. Chapter 4, all leaders are servants of God, and God will judge them. The ministry of apostles as servants of God, and how most of them would be end up suffering. The sending of Timothy to remind them. Chapter 5, the case of sexual immorality, in the church, and for the person who was sexually immoral, to be excommunicated. Paul makes a distinction between judgment of Christians and non-Christians by saying that whatever people who are not Christians do is none of Christians' business. That's what they feel they want to do, that's what they feel is right, etc. However, when somebody declares themselves to be a brother or to be a Christian, then they come under a different kind of I suppose treatment as as normal. So a Christian could be doing something, and a non-Christian could be doing exactly the same thing, but our response as Christians is different, to those two people. So 1 Corinthians 5 talks about that, which I think is is crucial for today. Chapter 6, how to handle grievances in church and among brothers. List of people that will not inherit the kingdom, or the things that they practice, how we were like that before, but now we are saved. Our bodies are members of Christ, so we should not be sexually immoral. It talks also about the peculiar nature of sexual sin, that all the other sins are sins committed outside, but sexual sin is something that is committed, to the body. So there's something peculiar, about it. Chapter 7 talks about marriage among Christians, the gift of singleness, laws on divorce and remarriage, people who were saved whilst they were already married, and how these laws kind of apply to them. Advice to the unmarried, or the single, or the virgins. Christians should only marry Christians. That's where you get that verse. Chapter 8, concerning food sacrificed to idols, mechanics of idols and how that all works, the principles around it. Treating others with understanding, including even if you have to change your behavior out of love for somebody else who might not yet understand these things. Chapter 9, Paul's defense for his apostleship. It talks also about paying pastors, Paul's flexibility and adapting to others, to help them get into the kingdom. Paul's diligence to watch himself, especially after he had preached and taught all these people, he also still had to watch himself. Chapter 10, the examples of the Old Testament are to help us stay away from sin. He also continues his teaching on idols and doing everything for the glory of God. Chapter 11 talks about the head coverings, talks about authority structures and our interdependence no matter what sex we are, rebuking about behavior at the Lord's table, i.e. during communion, reviewing and reviewing the teaching again on communion there. Chapter 12 talks about the gifts of the Holy Spirit and their purpose. The church is a body and how we all connect together. Chapter 13 continues that no matter what gift you have, the important thing is love for one another, or to use these gifts, in love and for building each other up. Also talks about the characteristics of true love, patience, kindness, bearing all things, etc. It also talks about faith, hope, and love, and the biggest of them, or the greatest them, being love. Then finally talks about the coming revelation of when we shall know as we are known. Chapter 14, clarification on tongues, the speaking of tongues and prophecy, order in the church, scenarios between husbands and wives in the church. Chapter 15, a recap of the gospel and apostles, the importance of resurrection and how without resurrection, Christianity really, is nonsense. That's basically what he was trying to say there. The coming of the end and how people would get glorified bodies. Chapter 16, principles of giving, and final greetings and commendation. So that's the book of First Corinthians. It's a really good book actually, First Corinthians, because in contrast to Romans, which is very okay, this is the the principle, this is the theology around XYZ. First Corinthians is more practical around things that were actually happening in the church, and how sometimes human beings and Christians make mistakes, and how they can make a change to that. So tomorrow we continue. We're going to read through the book of Second Corinthians, because Paul wrote a few letters to the church in Corinth. Then we're also going to look at the letter to Galatians. I will see you guys tomorrow.